Good afternoon, all the friends in the ICT industry, the CIOs and the policymakers who have got online to join us for this function this evening. A very warm welcome to all of you on behalf of Dataquest and Cybermedia for the Dataquest ICT Awards 2019. The Indian IT has a rich history of evolving to succeed, as well as to set an example for the rest of the world, thanks to some of the brightest IT minds that the country has been fortunate to have. The Dataquest ICT Awards, often known as the Oscars of the Indian ICT, have been commemorating for the last 26 years noteworthy contributions to the Indian ICT industry. Cybermedia, through the Dataquest ICT Awards, aims at acknowledging and celebrating industry leaders who have changed the course of the Indian IT industry and enabled the country to witness new heights year after year. The Dataquest IT Person of the Year winner is actually selected through a very long haul and a very professionally run process, which starts with the seeking of nominations from Dataquest readers for the IT Person of the Year award. From all the nominations that we get, the panel of Dataquest and other cybermedia editors shortlist names on the basis of the nominees' contribution to the growth of the ICT industry, spreading ICT usage nationally as well as internationally, national and global impact because of that, employment generation, amount of value add to the country's economy, and so on and so forth. These shortlisted names are then presented to a set of very, very eminent IT leaders of the country who then debate and discuss and choose the winner. This year's Dataquest Awards jury included, again, very, very tall stalwarts of the industry, including Mr. Arjun Malhotra, who was the co-founder of HCL, Ritesh Agarwal, the founder of OYO Rooms, Mr. Ajay, Secretary of Meity, was also a jury member. CP Gurnani, CEO of Tech Mahindra, Devdeep Gupta, who was the President and MD of SAP, and Dr. Gulshan Rai, former National Security Coordinator for the Government of India, Karan Bajwa, MD of IBM India, Som Satsangi, MD of HPE India, and Mr. Pradeep Gupta himself. It was a very, very eminent and can you hear me? Hello. So it was a very, very eminent jury which got together and selected the winner. Can I request the jury video to be played at this point, please?
So I think the IT industry is at a very nice point. I mean, you've got new technologies, you've got AI, you've got machine learning, you've got cloud. A lot of that is going to come in and disrupt the whole industry the way it is. So I just see a phenomenal amount of growth, phenomenal amount of change that's going to come into the IT industry, not just 2020, but beyond that too. So I'm very upbeat about it. So it was very interesting. I think we have, it's getting more and more difficult to try and identify winners in each of the segments. I think we had a very interesting discussion between all the jury members. The good news is that we were somewhat, there was a major consensus on most of this, but it was very close. And, there are a number of great people, great companies that are doing amazing things in India. And I feel sorry for the next jury. They're going to have a much more difficult time than we had in trying to select winners.
So digital technologies over the next decade is going to create an economic value add of $1 trillion in India. 2020 is a step towards that direction. Now today, truly a digital nation with digital technology embracing across all spheres of industries and all activities of life. Actually, the jury was pretty well distinguished, and it had a mixture of young entrepreneurship as well as experienced business leaders. And it was pretty enriching personally for me and for the overall interaction. I think we had a very, very productive day and a productive session.
As you know, we are in the era of digital transformation. So most industries are now trying to digitize some part of their entire ecosystem. When you are doing digital transformation, technology is at the core of all of this transformation. So you are really looking at adopting technologies like blockchain, IoT, AI, ML. And what's really happening is, as these companies are trying to go and adopt these technologies are now getting easily available on the major hyper-scaler cloud platforms, which means that most of the innovation and the creation of new platforms and new models and new innovative chargeback mechanism is all happening very, very fast. So when you really look at the proliferation of all of these technologies in the industry, which is giving rise to new industries, new business models, I would want to say that the outlook is very, very positive. I think the overall experience was very good. What happens typically when you have so many different people from different business segments come and talk, there are insights that you tend to take with you, which you never had. For example, we got a great insight on how Swiggy operates and what's the kind of business model and business process difficulties and complexities, and what is the kind of employment that they have generated in the country. Now, these are the things that are great takeaways from such sessions. Also, you get an opportunity to hobnob with someone like Arjun Malhotra, who's been a veteran in this industry. So absolutely exhilarating experience and a lot of positive takebacks for us.
So welcome to the 27th edition of Dataquest Awards. Dataquest, since its inception, started recognizing the movers and shakers of the IT industry. I remember when the industry was a very, very small industry. It was under 100 crores. Today, it is billions of dollars, great market capitalization. But most importantly, it has affected the lives of each and every Indian by making fundamental changes to the way we live, the way we act, the way we behave, the way we go about doing our business. This has been possible because of the contribution that have been made by the people who have made this industry happen, our award winners.
Thank you so much for that nice short film. We would be beginning this evening's function to present the Dataquest IT Person of the Year award with a discussion on digital ecosystems key to India's transforming economy, which has got very, very eminent Indian leaders who have served in various key positions with the government of India and are now championing the cause of making India a $5 trillion economy. The discussion is going to focus on government initiatives pertaining to digitization and self-reliant India, as it is one of the central government's leading missions today. We have with us a very, very accomplished and esteemed set of speakers this evening. It is really my pleasure to introduce the panelists. First and foremost, Mr. Prakash Kumar, former IT Secretary of Delhi. I don't know if all of you are aware of that. He was the IT Secretary of Delhi and one of the key people who started the reforms in the government processes here in Delhi. And obviously this year's Dataquest Person of the Year award winner and the Chief Executive Officer of the GST network. We also have with us Mr. R. Chandrasekhar. He, again, in the industry, he doesn't need any introduction. Former Telecom Secretary and former IT Secretary of the Government of India. And he was also a Dataquest Pathbreaker of the Year in the year 2005, when he was playing a very instrumental role in e-governance in Andhra Pradesh. We also have with us Mr. J. Satyanarayana, former Secretary Telecom as well as the Government of IT, Department of IT, and currently again a pioneer, one of the leading lights, one of the inspirations for people as far as e-governance is concerned. And currently he is the Chief Advisor for C4IR India and World Economic Forum. And we also have Mr. Ajay Sawhney. He was the Dataquest Awards jury member for 2019, and he is the secretary of the Ministry of IT and Electronics in the country. The panel discussion will be moderated by Mr. Pradeep Gupta, Chairman and Managing Director, Cybermedia. PG, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Ibrahim, and welcome to such an eminent panel that I have today with me. First of all, Mr. Prakash Kumar, congratulations on the Dataquest Person of the Year award for your outstanding work in the implementation of GSTN. The jury was absolutely unanimous when it came to your name as the recipient for this particular award. This is the second webinar in the award series. Today, what we will do is we will discuss the digital ecosystem, which is going to be the key to the transformation of India. Now, Prime Minister Modi has set up a goal of making India into a $5 trillion economy. He has also focused on Atmanirbhar Bharat. If we look at both these goals, they cannot be achieved unless we have transformational digitalization, as has been the case with Aadhaar, has been the case with UPI, Jandhan, GST, etc. Now, trying to capture such a vast topic in the next 45 minutes is surely a challenge. But my fellow panelists have agreed to a very interactive format. And in the typical BBC style, sharp questions, 2 to 3 minute responses, so that we can capture the essence over the next 45 minutes of this very, very vast topic. But to begin with, I have Mr. Nandan Nilekani, who would like to congratulate Prakash. So may I just request if we can have the message from Mr.
I am delighted to learn that Mr. Prakash Kumar, CEO of GSTN, has been awarded the Dataquest ICT Person of the Year for 2019. Prakash is really a truly unique individual. After a very successful career in the IAS, Prakash chose to go into the private sector where he did a great job. When the GSTN was set up, which is the Goods and Service Tax Network company, to be the technology backbone for India's most radical reform in indirect taxes, Prakash was selected as the founding CEO. Prakash has done an amazing job at the GSTN because this was both a very complex exercise technologically as well as in managing the diverse stakeholders involved. In terms of technology and business process, the country moved from a central system of excise and service tax and each state collecting its own version of VAT to one single national system where a taxpayer paid taxes, part of it went to the central government and part to the state government. This was a major change in both technology and business process. And states went from 36 different systems, one in each state or UT, to one national system. It was also a massive exercise in managing stakeholders because you had many stakeholders. You had the central government and the Ministry of Finance. You had all the states, all the state finance ministers were part of the GST Council. You had all these companies, small and large, which had to do a massive business process change. And it was really a big leap on many dimensions and work with the technology vendors. I'm convinced that Prakash has done an amazing job and I'm delighted that he has been selected as the Dataquest ICT Person of the Year 2019.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nilekani, for those words. And I think indeed you are so right that it was technology, process, combination of different kind of things that resulted in the success. And you were amongst the first persons to sort of show the way with the implementation of Aadhaar. Now, let me go to the past. And I will go to the 1980s when the railway reservation system was the first big, large customer-facing service.
that caught the fancy of the public. Yet at that time, computers were still treated as a luxury. This thing started changing in the 90s. Some focus on computers started emerging, but they still came under Ministry of Industries in most states. Mr. Chandrasekhar, you were amongst the forerunners in setting up the first IT department in the state of Andhra. Would you like to talk about those old days, please?
Yeah, sure. PG, before I start, permit me to spend a few seconds to add my own words of congratulations to Prakash Kumar on a very well-deserved award. I can say that because I've been associated with GSTN as a director since its inception, and in fact, even before that, during its conception phase. And I must say the way he handled the ever-expanding scope, the ever-contracting timelines, and the continuously changing goalposts has been truly remarkable. I think it would be difficult to find a project of this magnitude anywhere in the world being implemented in such a compressed time frame. So congratulations, Prakash.
Thank you.
So come to your question, PG, straight away. I was actually in Andhra Pradesh at that time. Mr. Chandrababu Naidu was the chief minister, and I was given the task of setting up the first IT department in the country at that time. The background to this is that Mr. Chandrababu Naidu, as the head of the party organization, had also used technology substantially in his management of his party, and he had given an impetus to the use of technology in governance. It's not that it was not used earlier, but it was largely a bureaucratic and a technocratic affair. But as a stated objective of the government at the political level, I think he was a pioneer in that sense. And while, of course, before him, there were leaders like Rajiv Gandhi, who had recognized the importance of IT. And in his time, not only were computers used, but the NIC expanded to all the states. So there was a build-up to this, but at the state level, I think it was Mr. Naidu who was seen as a pioneer. The then Cabinet Secretary, Mr. TSR Subramaniam, he recognized that there was something happening which was going to substantially affect administration across the country. He brought a whole delegation to the state to understand what is going on and carry the message elsewhere. And he persuaded us to actually host the National E-Governance Conference. And the first two were hosted in Hyderabad. The whole push towards use of IT in governance in the state under that program was a part of a three-pronged strategy by the state to, on one hand, attract investment to good infrastructure like the high-tech city, to create human capacity by institutions like the IIIT Hyderabad, and most significantly, to actually focus on governance and services to citizens and look at that in a very systematic way. So it was a bit of a curiosity, but ironically, in the some of the early efforts, in fact, there was a certain amount of resistance by employees who were not very sure what this whole animal is and how it would impact them. But after a lot of challenges, that was somehow overcome. As the CMD APIIC, the Infrastructure Corporation, I was given the additional task of setting up the IT department, and being the head of a going concern with all the infrastructure there at my disposal made it easier. And we drew up as a part of this whole initiative the whole e-governance plan for the state, which then became, in a sense, something that many states emulated, and after which I, in fact, had the pleasure of passing on the baton to Mr. Satyanarayana, who really did a lot of good work, but I'm sure he'll talk about that. So that was the early initiation of the whole ITization in government at a state level, particularly.
It was so nostalgic, what you were talking about when you mentioned about skeptics. I think there were less people supporting information technology. There were more skeptics which were around. I do remember that 4 politicians who were trying to push IT were called the Gang of Four around that time. So yeah, it was a completely different kind of a scenario that existed at that time. Mr. Satyanarayan, you took up the mantle in Andhra. most of the early applications were in the nature of, a lot of data, collation of that, MIS reporting, land records, and so on. Mr. Naidu, of course, realized this power of good MIS and so on, but share with us the milieu of those times.
Thank you, Pradeep. And first, let me congratulate Prakash for being the Person of the Year. Really tremendous work he has done, not only in GSTN but in his earlier part of his career. He's a good friend and a very great person. I really, from the bottom of my heart, I congratulate him for this great distinction today. Let me go back to Pradeep's question. I think it is like kal, aaj or kal in more sense than one, Pradeep. You have asked us to talk about the distant past of IT and also the recent past and the future. Likewise, you have assembled three persons like Chandrasekhar and myself and Ajay Sawhney, the Parsom, Kal or Aaj in terms of being the IT secretary of the country. It's really the coincidence or planned, I don't know. Let me tell a little bit about the challenges that we had. My first adventure was major one on the card project at the time, which was registration department, which is one of the complex and difficult, not so much liked by the public. We had to transform that using technology, and we did that. At 300 locations on the same day we launched it in 15 months. And I would tell that it's a time of the transformation is so radical from that time to now. It was 128 KB to 128 KB in your hand in the form of a floppy, for instance, to 128 GB in your pocket pen drive. So 1 million times the capacity has increased from those days to where we are today. That is really significant, and it's very happy to be that we have been part of that kind of a long journey. So the card project really involved a lot of change management. Now, how can you register a sale deed through the computer? Somebody had to examine it. So a lot of witnesses, a lot of copying had to be done. How can you do the whole thing through the computer? So there was dismay, disbelief, etc. And I had to personally, convince people that it can be done. So I used to go and meet the people all over in the sub-registrar offices and different regions, districts, etc. One thing to remove the estrangement between technology and the domain. I used to play a small sentimental trick, I would say. Both my grandfathers were really sub-registrars 100 years ago. So I used to start any conversation with that. So it used to melt the crowd immediately and turn them to, yes, it can be. He's something, close to us and so on. And it was pain management. I mean, in short, was a very important thing those days. So we did that. And then in 1999, the big break came with through eSeva, which is a one-stop shop for citizen services. You could, on the same counter, you could do about 40 plus transactions in those days. And even today, it was after 20 years, it's still, though the name has been changed to MeSeva, and it continues in both the states, Andhra and Telangana, and it is trendsetter for similar programs in several other states. I recollect fondly. And also, we had to struggle very much with the technology. How can you integrate those services? It's all trivial today. An MCA boy would do that today. But in those days, it was very difficult. And we were working day and night with a team. And once around midnight, we broke through the technology and we could display it. I rang up Mr. Chandrasekhar in the dead of the night. Sir, it's like Eureka, we have done it. So he must be remembering that day. So that was e-Seva. And then later again, G2B, which is a e-procurement for the first time done, and Ajay Sawhney was with me at that time. We worked together and very successfully did that. So I'm just quoting 3 of those projects, which were the early trendsetters in this space. But quite nostalgic. And thank you for the Kal Aaj Aur Kal.
Thank you very much. Once again, so very nostalgic, and of course, I think there is something special about Andhra that several of our IT secretaries have been from that particular state. I guess it was the early seeds which were sown by Mr. Chandrasekhar in that particular state, which resulted in that. Mr. Sawhney, this was also the time when a whole lot of software exports were growing. India was emerging on that scene. There was all this fear of the Y2K and so on. And I think a lot of states actually looked at IT as a mode of investment. That can we create some sort of park? Can we get money in? Walk us through that time period, please.
Yeah, first of all, congratulations to Prakash on an amazing journey in IT and a very well-deserved award. GSTN is one of the national platforms, national digital platforms that I always cite in support of going in for more and more sectoral digital platforms. So congratulations, Prakash. Now to your question, I think that was a wonderful time, as Mr. Chandrasekhar put it. We had a 3-pronged strategy: attract investment, use IT very effectively within the government, and also build a fabulous human resource base, or strengthen the base that was already there. So we Mr. Chandrasekhar was both Secretary IT, and also he was looking after the AP IIC, AP Industrial Infrastructure Corporation. And in the second position, he actually initiated setting up of the cyber towers. The very first large IT park in that part. That part had, there were shepherds grazing. It was a hilly area, and it was very difficult to imagine how IT could actually take shape in that area. But L&T came in and helped in setting up that cyber towers, and with a very dynamic, chief minister pushing it along. I think we soon were able to create tremendous interest among investors. A meeting between our then CM, Mr. Chandrababu Naidu, and Bill Gates in Delhi actually paved the way for a very major impetus to this when the CM persuaded Mr. Bill Gates to actually step out of Seattle and not just, look at India as for the next software development or research center for Microsoft, but also look at Hyderabad and come in and make Hyderabad its home. So I think that was a huge thing. And I also remember that we used to have almost like a hit list, a list of about 50 top global companies and around, I think, 10 to 15 Indian major companies. And we used to sort of, look for all possible ways in which we could get them interested in Hyderabad, reach out to some key decision makers in each of these companies, and persuade them to at least visit Hyderabad and see for themselves what's going on. And I think I almost, under the guidance of Mr. Chandrasekhar and later under the guidance of Mr. Satyanarayana, I think I was actually a very good tour operator. So we used to start by receiving, the key decision makers at the Begumpet airport and then take them through a tour which could have only a predetermined outcome. So it's I think we did everything, and we used to consider that as a running a pilgrimage kind of a tour. And I remember the entire circuit, the e-Seva Center, and the transportation, the Road Transport Authority, and Triple IT, and the cyber towers, and then, if required, a meal with the chief minister, which used to typically clinch the decision. So it was a wonderful time, and I think we really brought in some excellent companies in that period.
I think the big change which was there was that till that time the industry was used to let business come to them. The bureaucrats were used to let industry come to them, but that complete thing changed when the bureaucracy started reaching out to industry. So it's really that major change which happened. Mr. Kumar, around that time, the first of the citizen services also started emerging. Driving licenses and so on. What was the nature of these early citizen services that started emerging? You're on mute, so.
Okay. So just now you mentioned about industry coming to the bureaucrats. Here, the thinking came, and in fact, Mr. Satyanarayana was at the center of it. How can we go to the citizen? Before that, we had to go to various departments to get our things done. And that also between 10 a.m. and 1 p.m. And if you're lucky, maybe in the afternoon. And that's it, no Saturday and Sunday. You stand in line, one counter or two counters. And from there, this was an out-of-box thinking that can we bring all the services to one place? And then the people come there. These centers be open from morning till late evening, and also on Saturday, Sunday. And it's be air conditioned, good ambience. You also have water, drinking water, and things of that sort. You also have a bank to make payment, bank account holder there. And on top of that, in fact, what I saw in Hyderabad at that time was they also ran lotteries for some time, so that more people come and they could give them some gift. So that was, and they started, as you mentioned, it was started with a project called Twins, Twin Cities Network Services. And I still remember I had gone to meet Mr. Satyanarayana as representative of Delhi government to see how things were being done. He took me to his room and he showed me that MIS, and proudly he said, okay, look, now so many transactions have happened and how this graph has gone up. So from that time, we have come to a situation today where we have almost 2.5 lakh CSDs, one at least in each panchayat across the country, where you can have multiple services. In fact, these days you have more than 300 odd services, B2C, B2B, G2B, and all kinds of other services which are being provided. So it's from where we started and where we have come, it's a big journey which happened here.
No, absolutely. It's been a fascinating journey. But so far we have only reached the millennium, and now let's talk about the last sort of 20 years. This time, let me start with you, Mr. Satyanarayan. By now, DOE had become a full-fledged ministry. Most states had their IT departments and so on. Smart governance had started entering the lexicon of not just bureaucracy, but also of the politicians. You headed NISG during that time. What were the key changes that you saw taking place at that time in terms of the entire scenario?
Yeah. So actually, I think the importance and the benefits of IT were well known by the time, and there was no longer change management was a big issue. People were demanding for use of technology in the government, and governments were under pressure. to perform and using technology. So that was the time. It was also Mr. Chandrasekhar's idea. He put together the concept of NISG. He was the person who formulated the whole thing, and he was the first person there, OSD, which used to be called, and I was the first CEO. So the formative time of NISG was very interesting. It was a not-for-profit company. Technically, it has to earn its own bread, and there is no grant from the government, and so on. So we were working on projects and so on. In the formative time, one important thing that I remember is that what should we do here in NISG and what we should not do in NISG. We had to be clear on both these matters. So what we had to decided ultimately was that we should architect e-governance. So the tagline is architecting e-governance is the tagline for NISG, and it stays even till this day. So that means that, how do you enable more and more governments, state governments and central government ministries to adopt IT in a systematic way? The system building part was the main thing there, the focus, for which architecture was very important. So we were doing that kind of work. Also trying to build capacities in the government, various governments. I was personally going around the country and, taking classes for senior bureaucrats and ministers and public representatives in several states. So that is a key role we played in NISG. And alongside, we were speaking with experience, on our hand. Like, the first project was MCA 21 for the company affairs, now called corporate affairs, which is a G2B project, and a lot of BPR we had to do. And first time a major transformation has happened. Companies could file the returns from where they were, from their own premises, without going anywhere. The second major project, which I'm personally, one of my favorite projects, I would say, was the Passport Seva project, where Prakash just now said, how do you make people not stand in line for hours just to put in their application for the passport? So the idea of Passport Seva came, and from NISG, we shaped the whole project from concept to completion, and really one of the highly satisfying, and it touches the citizens in a very deep way and impact. So and then also the PPP model was one more thing that we promoted in the NISG, public-private partnership. Previously, governments were reluctant to shake hands with a private industry to implement a project. Either you do it in-house or don't do it. So NISG made the big break in bringing the concept of PPP very much into the mainstream of government thinking. So these are the things. And one thing we decided very clearly in NISG, what we should not do was also equally important. We said, no line of code in this office. We will not write any code, but we'll kind of architect. Architecture is our job, and we'll stick to that. So that's how, the early days of NISG, and really it's still serving a cause in the e-governance space.
That's really wonderful. I mean, I've been one of the, and I'm sure all the people who are watching this webinar have all seen the tremendous changes that take place in different kind of things. I remember when I went for my last passport renewal, I had sort of budgeted half a day, and the whole thing was over in 45 minutes. So, it was really a totally different kind of a thing. That
one more small anecdote, 30 seconds. When we were shaping the vision for the Passport Seva project, we had a meeting with the Honorable Prime Minister at that time, and we were trying to struggle around the concept, vision, etc. He said only two things. No one should stand in line is one aspiration. Anyone who goes in should come out in 45 minutes with a very clear yes or no. Period. Meeting is over, project is approved. We had a very clear direction. We worked backwards and build the whole architecture around these two principles, just as an anecdote. Yeah.
Absolutely. And by the way, that 45 minutes included filling up a feedback form. So, it was really a change of thinking which was taking place there. Mr. Chandrasekhar, you were part of that entire change which was happening. You had the NEGP, you had the CSCs, the data centers, swans. Mobility was also, more prevalent at that time. The vocabulary was changing. What was the change in terms of the processes and the thinking, help us relive those days.
Yeah. That period of nearly 2 decades, and even more particularly from 2004 onwards, so much happened. In fact, the foundation at a national level for much of what is under the e-governance umbrella today has its origins at that time. And while the National E-Governance Program was approved by the Cabinet in 2006, a lot of core infrastructure got built up, whether it was wide area networks or the countrywide citizen service centers or common service centers in all the villages, so that people who didn't have computers or were not IT literate could access the services. All of this was happening on one side. On the other side, the telecom infrastructure and the spread of mobile telephony was happening. And these came together to enable large turnkey projects, which Mr. Satyanarayana was talking about, like MCA and MEA, being done on a PPP mode in a compressed time frame. That was unimagined earlier. And even traditional in-house projects which were being done in the CBDT and CBEC also were transformed by bringing in the private sector. So a lot of change in thinking happened because of these developments. Towards the latter part of that decade also, some of the more transformative initiatives took birth under the larger umbrella of the NEGP. The Aadhaar, in fact, was the ID project. It was a very basic project. The UPI and the whole takeoff of mobile financial payments riding on the spread of mobile telephony, the direct benefit transfer program to eliminate all the corruption and the multiple tiers for disbursement of government benefits. And of course, the GSTN itself also was established in 2013. So this was a government program, but while it gave a great impetus, the spread was still a little uneven across the states. But I think even those states which were a little behind actually did start getting motivated. By the time 2014 came and Mr. Modi became the Prime Minister, we had arguably the first politician in India who really understood very deeply the role of social media in politics and how that could be leveraged. And that came on top of a very strong experience in using technology in governance as the Chief Minister of Gujarat for well over a decade. But also, he, I think, was a person who had a tremendous sense of the interplay between these two, the use of social media in politics, the use of technology in governance, and how these interplay with each other. And now we are seeing all of this getting blurred and becoming, almost a continuum. Parallel to all this, we saw the rise of the domestic digital economy and the meteoric rise of social media. We saw the advent of local languages. A lot of these platforms and Google and others brought in local languages, which brought in a few more 100 million and rural people into usage of the social media. And, language-free platforms like TikTok, for example. Of course, it's banned now, but there are other similar platforms. All of this really made it, something which the common man could use, did use, and got integrated into like never before. There was hardly anything which had transformed the country in the same manner. And while all this was happening, another story, another prong to this whole growth was the Indian IT industry and services achieving global dominance. So today, all of these are coming together, and now the concerns have shifted. We have concerns about security and privacy, and perhaps the dominance of a lot of this digital economy and data economy and some of the telecom infrastructure, particularly on the hardware side, by a number of foreign companies, which have actually contributed to the revolution which happened in India. But now the need has been felt to really bring in an Atmanirbhar, which you referred to earlier, so that India could increase its own capability of these areas. And a fascinating journey for these, almost 15 to incredible, the kind of things that was fortunate enough to witness.
Absolutely incredible journey. But what was also incredible is how you captured each and everything which was happening during that particular time. So kudos to you for that. Mr. Kumar, as Mr. Chandrasekhar just now mentioned, Aadhaar was there, JAM was there, mobility, Aadhaar, Jandan, all of those programs, UPI. This is the time when you moved from being a bureaucrat, you moved into the private sector before you moved back to GSTN. So you had a view from inside and you had a view from outside. And would love to have your views, in terms of what were the challenges in terms of acceptability, what were the challenges that was there in terms of flexibility, scalability, and so on.
In fact, the scalability part, how these platforms have enabled today, I'll just give you an example of the JAM Trinity. I mean, when I was in the government at that time, we didn't have any mechanism to push through so much of transactions. And this, the way they have Jandhan Yojana, Aadhaar and mobile combination has helped government to transfer huge amount of subsidies or this direct benefit program, under direct benefit program. Last year, the amount transferred was 3,81,000 crore. Just to give you some idea of how much it is 4 months GST collection for the whole country. Now that much was transferred through these platforms, which is first government created those many accounts for people. So more than 35 crore accounts. Then you have Aadhaar, so that you could identify people, and then the mobile. And this particular thing, what started in 13-14 with 10 crore people getting these benefits, has reached now more than 70 crores. Something which started around 7,000 crores has gone to more than 3,81,000 crores in 1 year. So that's the kind of which has done away with all the intermediaries, leakages which were happening, and the estimated benefit which people have done is around 1,70,000 crores. So that's the kind of scaling up which the technology has brought. In fact, in our case as well, when we started this, we didn't even know how many invoices will be reported, business to business invoices will be reported. So we had to build a system which can scale. And in fact, that was the time we went to, when we were designing it, architecting the solution, to meet people in Google, Facebook, Aadhaar, and multiple agencies, just to understand how do we design it, architect it so that things can scale up and we won't have any challenge later. So, we were fortunate to have some of the best designers who helped us, like Dr. Pramod Verma, to architect the solution. And here we have a system which replaced 37 different systems by one, where today we started with 64 lakh taxpayers. We have 1.25 crore taxpayers. This is just only interface and no paper, not even acknowledgement. Everything has to be filed electronically. So that's the difference which the new technology has brought, and we have been fortunate enough to utilize that. PG, over to you.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. That has been the transformation that has taken place. Thank you very much, panel, for keeping to the time. We are just 7 minutes above time, which is, I think, very unique kind of a thing in India, because, usually discussions far exceed the time allocated to them. So, it's really a wonderful feeling. We have one more guest who wants to congratulate. Oh, sorry, my bad. I missed out. Mr. Sawhney, I have one question for you. Digital India. Mr. Chandrasekhar talked about Digital India coming in 2014, 15 during that time frame. Share with us the context of Digital India, because you were at the helm of affairs for very much a large part of that time period.
Yeah, I had got the opportunity to work as President and CEO of the National E-Governance Division. That was from 2010 to 2012. And at that point of time, the National E-Governance program was in full bloom. All the mission mode projects were taking shape. And then Digital India actually took shape in 2015. That is when it got launched. I was, of course, back in the state by then, but I had been following this very closely. And many of the, projects and programs which used to be separate, including efforts on infrastructure, efforts on taking broadband connectivity everywhere, efforts on, the tremendous emphasis on inclusion as a major area of emphasis. And then, of course, a continuous improvement in services, and eventually, the dream of having a whole of government approach. I think these are the major imperatives that gave shape to Digital India. And today, with 5 years of Digital India, having been, we have gone through that journey, I think we really have a fabulous foundation where national public digital platforms are starting to take shape. Not just the horizontal platforms like Aadhaar, GSTN, UPI, and GEM, but also the sectoral digital platforms like healthcare, which healthcare soon to follow. I think we should have agriculture, education, logistics, etc. And this has been a wonderful journey of Digital India. I think Digital India is something which is dear to all of us, and we hope to really build on top of what we already have as a very strong foundation.
Thank you very much. Indeed, Digital India is changing the fabric of each and every sector, and we are going to see a whole lot of impact of that in the next few decades. And we will take that up in the next segment. But before I move on to the next segment, there is one more gentleman who would like to congratulate you, Mr. Prakash Kumar. So may I welcome Mr. R.S. Sharma to say a few words.
Well, friends, good evening. My congratulations to Prakash Kumar on being nominated as the Dataquest IT Person of the year 2019. He wins the award for the work done as the first CEO of GST Network, where Prakash took up the challenge to build a system for tax collection and reconciliation that would meet the needs of the central and state governments, banks, the banking regulator, and the taxpayers. It's a happy coincidence that Dataquest is presenting the award in August this year, while we are celebrating 2 technology milestones, both of which were necessary for the GSTN to become a reality. They are the launch of mobile telephony and internet in India. Setting up the GSTN could have been fraught with challenges, as one can imagine, because of the conflicting demands from the stakeholders. As CEO of GSTN, Prakash could not have expected to be left off easily. GSTN is a major change in collection, administration, and distribution of taxes that would have long-term impact on the development of this country. Therefore, scrutiny and utmost care are needed to be encouraged. I am happy that Prakash has proved to be up to the task. India is on the cusp of its development trajectory. Foundational systems like GSTN or UPI and Aadhaar before that have been built by the government or with the active intervention. These examples of frugal, technology-driven solutions provide a unique opportunity not found elsewhere in the world. Using the basic services already available to us, we can build the next wave of systems for which we do not even require much government support. For instance, UPI standardized the language of money transfer and revolutionized e-payments. The impact has been nothing short of revolutionary. Imagine what happens when language of booking a cab or of finding a doctor or making a purchase becomes standardized too. Third parties can then create low-cost, locally relevant solutions that serve the need of the people. Imagine how such open protocols and systems can drive efficiency and promote competition so that businesses prosper by delivering better services and not be milking network effects from the huge platform they have invested in. Would this require policy intervention by the government? Perhaps. But such interventions would be minimal compared to what is needed to disrupt the monopoly practice of large players. These are thoughts for charting the path of digital innovation for which there is unique opportunity in India. I wanted to share these thoughts with those who hope to be honored as IT persons in future years. Also, we need to develop solutions and continue to develop solutions which are interoperable, frugal, and cost effective. Tonight, of course, we celebrate the achievements of Prakash. First of all, I've known Prakash for many years now, first as IT secretary in the government of Delhi, and thereafter in many capacities. He worked with Cisco, he worked with Microsoft, and of course, he has extremely varied experience. More importantly, I am especially delighted that he comes from my home state of Jharkhand and is an alumnus of the prestigious Netarhat school in that state. The motto of this school is Atta Deepa Viharatha, Atta Deepa Viharatha, which means be your own light, be island unto yourself. Prakash, whose name itself means light, has indeed followed the motto while doing path-breaking work for GSTN. This reform is indirect taxation has the potential to transform the country in future. I understand that Dataquest has structured a stringent process of selection. Considering the scope and complexity of Prakash's work, they may not have found it difficult to nominate him for 2019 award. He deserves the award, and I congratulate him once again for his achievement. At the same time, let me congratulate others also who made it to the select list of finalists and wish them better luck in future years. My view is that probably there will not be a better candidate for this award this year than Prakash.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sharma, for those lovely words, for those very, very kind words. Let's now look at the future. With the COVID pandemic, we have reached a fork in the road. Digital transformation is no longer desirable, it is now a necessity. The last 6 months have removed several mind blocks permanently. The next decade will see a lot of deep tech coming into every walk of life. This revolution is also led by startups. Mr. Sawhney, let me start with you this time. You have been driving a huge amount of interaction in terms of technology and startups. What is the scope? What exactly is being done in terms of promoting, deep tech and other kind of technologies and startups?
Yeah, I think it's started almost by itself in the looking at the number of unicorns that we have been able to grow. The success of those that have become unicorns has encouraged, has inspired a very large number of entrepreneurs in our ecosystem to look at entrepreneurship as as their vocation. And there's such amazing scope. sometimes I believe that the early 80s, saw the emergence of some of the early, technology companies that went on to become huge forces in the world. And we are almost having a rerun of that period. Once again, we have a large number of technologies which are hurtling in. They are coming in rapidly. We know that these technologies will have a huge impact. We still don't know exactly how and exactly who will make it happen. I think the youngsters are actually recognizing that opportunity and are jumping into the fray. We are helping it along with a number of incubation centers. We work closely with the industry, whether it is in the area of the software startups, the BPO services, IT services, or it is in the area of electronics and devices. I think in all of these, we actually continue, and not just Ministry of Electronics and IT, the industries side, and various ministries have actually joined up this entire effort to create situations where there is a greater likelihood of success. There is a possibility of getting some support from the government, and there's a possibility of getting mentorship. In particular, in the recent period, we have also gone in for certain innovation challenges, and bored by the success of Arogya Setu, which got developed in about 21 days and went on to have achieve a milestone of 15 crore downloads. We went ahead with a challenge round on video conferencing solutions, and then a number of apps coming from the Indian companies. And we are overwhelmed by the amount of work that is going on, by the talent that exists, and it's sheer delight to see the youngsters and young companies imagine something which doesn't exist and bring it into being. And I think what I see for the government as a role is not just encouraging them, but also creating a market for them. And this time, not just encouraging them to capture the market in India, but grooming them to capture the market globally. I think that has to be our aim this time. And we have so many problems in so many areas that are yet to be solved. And that is the best situation for startups to attack and to succeed.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think over the next 15 years, we will see deep tech becoming ubiquitous and getting into each and every area. And this is a movement which will be led indeed by various startups which are there. Mr. Kumar, you talked about earlier the benefits because of various applications. You talked about the benefits because of GSTN and so on. What will be the future roadmaps? What will be more such benefits to the economy that you see emerging in the future in the next 10 years?
In fact, my entire effort, whatever I have done so far, is into services which governments deliver to its people. Now, 20 years back, we brought out services being delivered from different departments to one place. What Mr. Satyanarayana talked about, e-Seva, me-Seva, Friends, etc. By different names. Now the time has come, and especially enabled by the technology, to put the citizen at the center and dismantle the different sections which we have. That okay, I am education department, I do this, I provide scholarship. After that, I have nothing to do. Then I am the skill development, I give skills, or I am from ITI or a diploma institution, I do this. I don't even care whether this is his requirement or not. Then how do I bring direct benefit program to him? How do I bring health and other related things to him. So basically, how do I make a citizen focus for multiple ministries, programs, whether it is skills, reskilling, jobs, like employment exchange, they look at it from one's perspective that, okay, I make them meet. But then how can I do it? How can I enable him to do it on his mobile phone where he or she can apply? Then the agency which is going to recruit or need such people, they can identify and do it. Then he says, okay, I've worked for 2 years. How do I reskill myself and get into the next slot? The short question is, the short thing is that how do we break these silos and say, okay, citizen, and especially those who are coming from humble backgrounds who need all this support, they are the center, and all of us will do. It's very easy to say, but difficult to implement. But when we have implemented a program like the GSTN, where we have central government, state governments, and all have come together, it's not difficult. Technology today enables. So just make that person at the center and bring all services to him and enable him to avail that and grow up, come out of the situation where he is and move forward, be more skilled, more economically independent, and take his family to the next level. So that will be that's the area we need to get into.
Absolutely. And one such area that all the speakers in the panel talked about was health. And Mr. Satyanarayana, you have been working in that area. So, you worked on the national, the blueprint for health. And of course, now it is a mission. The Prime Minister just a few days back announced that. So what do you see as the transformations being brought about by this blueprint, and then what are some of the other such transformations that we can expect over the next decade?
Pradeep, I think one word answer for that is we need to evolve from systems to ecosystems at this stage in India. For instance, NIG was established 15 years ago for building systems, but today that is the past. We have to think of a mechanism whereby ecosystems, which is much larger than a system, we should promote such ecosystems to develop. So they say IT to ET, information technology to ecosystem technology is what they're talking about. So we need to realize that how is it possible to happen? While National Digital Health Mission and Blueprint is an example in point, but let me very quickly mention the requisites of an ecosystem to evolve. First of all, it should be based on certain principles like federated architecture. Because in a country like India, so large and complex and diverse, with center and states playing different complementary roles, public and private playing some complementary roles, etc. It cannot be a monolithic kind of architecture. It should be federated architecture, number one. Second is interoperability driven by standards is very much required in several of these sectors. For instance, in the case of healthcare, you asked me what is the difference. So we bring the standards there, the EHR standards and fire standards, FHIR fire standards is at the heart of the whole thing. So standards is very important. Third is leaving a window wide open for innovation and for value-added services by the startups and other entrepreneurs. Very important for the ecosystem to develop. It will not happen by itself. Many of the startups, for instance, idea is bright, it has worked well in a lab environment in a small scale, but there is no access to market on the one side, there is no access to the data on the other side. We need to create frameworks that enable these two kinds of access, which are very important for the innovation to grow. Otherwise, you'll stop at at a dead end without data, without market. So that's very important for. Then another side by side, you have to think of privacy by design and security by design. When you are thinking of an ecosystem where there is a mixture of lot of systems trying to talk to each other, then privacy and security by design we have to work out. We did all this in the case of National Digital Health Blueprint, which I had the privilege and fortune of chairing that committee last year, and it was announced by Honorable Prime Minister last week, and it's getting implemented in 6 union territories right now. So last is, the future. We have talked about future. Of course, one more additional thing is similar ecosystems are being evolved in the, encouraged by the health example, agriculture, education, and also women and child development and nutrition. Those areas we are currently working on. One important point I would like to say is that the future lies again in emerging technologies. A lot of new technologies are again coming and trying to disrupt the systems here. So an ecosystem, by design should be geared to take in and absorb the emerging technologies like artificial intelligence, IoT, and other related technologies here, AR, VR, etc. They make eminent sense in the current day period when data is becoming so large and there's a wealth of benefits hidden in the data. So how can you use new technologies and intelligent and timely decisions you can take? So in fact, I'm currently, as the designation shows, I'm with the World Economic Forum. With this agenda, how do you make use of leverage the emerging technologies in a responsible and in a futuristic way that will help the citizen. It's in a citizen-centric way, in a human way. That's what humanity is at the center of the whole piece. So the future lies in that ecosystems and emerging technologies. Thank you.
Absolutely. That was a wonderful insight when you said from systems to ecosystems. I think that is the change. And on deep technologies, just want to share with you that, in September, Dataquest is doing a deep tech one-day virtual conference in which we are trying to look at different kind of technologies and impact of those technologies in different areas. So Mr. Sawhney, you also had mentioned about it. Mr. Satyanarayana, you also talked about deep technology. So indeed, that is something that we are now focusing on. And over the next 1 year, you will see a lot of special focus coming in, various things that we are doing in terms of deep technology. Mr. Chandrasekhar, we've been talking about the $5 trillion economy. Isn't it time we did some international benchmarks? And I'm sure we have done those international benchmarks with other $5 trillion economies. Where are the gaps? Where do we need to move in terms of, realizing that the benefit of the $5 trillion economy is the maximum for our citizens?
Yeah. So, PG, that's actually a very, very interesting question, and the answer also is a fairly exciting one in this sense. That today, if you look at it, there are really only 2 countries which are above a $5 trillion economy: the US and China. Japan is just about at the cusp, and India is the 5th largest in GDP in that sense, but the 3rd largest if you look at it from PPP perspective, purchasing power parity perspective. But if you compare, the digital economy as a part of the larger economy and how much of that it accounts for and what are the trends, to take China as an example, the digital economy, if you define it narrowly, meaning just IT and telecom and hardware, is about 6%. Whereas if you define it in a broader sense, the narrower definition is used by OECD, but in a broader sense, covering the economy which has migrated into the digital mode, irrespective of whether it is the core technology piece, then it is about 30% in China, and that also has doubled. That is after doubling since 2008. If you compare it with the US, in the US it's around 60%. If you compare it with Japan, it's around 46%. India and of other large emerging economies are at around 20%. So this $5 trillion economy aspiration, which was set for 2025, the expectation was that there could be a $1 trillion contribution from the digital economy into that, and a lot of it would depend on the policies that drive the digital economy. Post-COVID, this was of course before COVID, but post-COVID, it appears that the timeline for the $5 trillion economy has been pushed back a little bit because of some of the setbacks. But we are actually seeing that the growth of the digital economy, in fact, is getting accelerated. So what we are going to see is a faster rise in the percentage contribution of the digital economy to the overall economy than we had earlier anticipated. Fortunately, because of a lot of the building blocks that we talked about and a lot of things that were talked about in the earlier part of this session, I think we are well poised for the growth of that digital economy. And this is also going to be fortified, apart from all the global platforms and domestic platforms and startups that are there, with the emergence of mega national digital platforms in key areas of the economy, particularly in the social sector, healthcare, agriculture, education, in smart cities, in the spread of Industry 4.0 and so on. And all of this connecting ecosystems. It's no longer about just the government, but about the entire ecosystem. So when you move from system to ecosystem, I think what becomes another very critical question is really the catalytic role of the government and what it should do and what it should enable and the difference between the two. So a lot will depend on how some of these mega projects are implemented, how these platforms and social sectors are built in terms of ownership, in terms of enabling competition and innovation, and how they will succeed in integrating the ecosystem, both of private and public players in each of the sectors. That's again a qualitatively very different challenge from those that we have been dealing with in the past. Then you come to the enabling part. And in catalyzing the digital economy, a lot of the regulatory framework is going to be critical. If there is no regulation, there will be no trust in the digital economy. If there's too much of regulation, you will not have economic growth, you will not have innovation, and the economic opportunity will not be leveraged fully. So getting the, intervening and in a sense, not allowing the market forces to operate to the extent that they can, is one aspect. The intervention on eliminating merchant discount rate is an example of perhaps going a little too far in intervention. So a comprehensive data governance and platform governance policies are absolutely critical in maximizing these economic gains and innovation on one side, and on the other side, harmonizing these with the policies that are required for privacy and security so that there is trust in this digital ecosystem. Happening, the Indian industry has weathered the COVID crisis, and it's now poised for a greater share of the global pie going forward. So the bottom line of all this is that I think the future looks really bright for the digital economy in India at this point. And in a sense, and this may sound a little perverse as a comment, but COVID has actually made it only brighter because of the compulsions that it has brought in. So back to you, PG.
No, absolutely. I remember in the 90s when we talked about $1 billion as a target for the software export industry, nobody believed that we could achieve that, and we sort of crossed 100 billion and so on. I'm sure the next target of $1 trillion in terms of digital economy is the next goalpost that we have to reach out to, and I'm sure the way the entire ecosystem work towards ensuring that, the same way there will be a complete ecosystem that will evolve in terms of achieving that $1 trillion goal. Thank you very much, panelists. I think it's really been a wonderful discussion, very, very succinct, very, very much to the point. Lots of new thoughts that have come out in this panel discussion. Mr. Prakash Kumar, once again, I would like to congratulate you. Normally, we would have done it in, you know, in a more, five-star ambience and so on. But because of the situation right now, we have to do it virtually. So, you will see your virtual trophy, but we will ensure that it gets delivered to you soon enough. Over to you, Ibrahim, so that you can please read the citation for Mr. Kumar. Hello.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much, PG. Before I read out the citation for Mr. Prakash Kumar, I'll just narrate a small anecdote. I think it was the time early 2000. I think when either before Mr. Chandrasekhar had got the Pathbreaker Award or after that, but it was around that time. And I'm talking in the context of the presence of Mr. Chandrasekhar and Mr. Satyanarayana here this afternoon, this evening. And there was so much, the impact was such that I think immediately after, around that time when we were doing a story on, a cover story on, Dataquest was doing a cover story on NEGAP and MMPs. NEGAP, some of you might not know, was National E-Governance Action Plan, and MMPs were the Mission Most projects we were doing. And we were touring various states to get a sense of what's happening. And in most of the places that we went to, Andhra Pradesh was the thing that they were talking about. So the trio of Mr. Chandrababu Naidu and Mr. Chandrasekhar and Mr. Satyanarayanan and their teams. I think the kind of impact they had made over the years, doing a lot of e-governance work. So somebody actually there said it is actually not Andhra Pradesh, it is Andhra pressure. And I remember one of the IT secretary saying, यार आंध्रा वालों ने बहुत प्रेशर डाल दिया यार आंध्रा वालों ने बहुत प्रेशर डाल दिया. But anyway, I think that's good that there were some leaders and then the entire country benefited from it. I also wanted to inform that the Dataquest Award 2019 presented the Lifetime Achievement Award to Mr. R.S. Pawar. The function was held last week. And the Pathbreaker Award this year will go to Shri Harsha Majeti, the co-founder and CEO of Swiggy. So we will reassemble at that time. So once again, congratulations to all the winners. And before I read out actually Mr. Prakash Kumar's citation, just very, very small anecdote. And I think he had just joined Cisco, and I had gone to meet him in his Barakhamba Road office, and I was a little unhappy. Why has he? And that was the time when there was NEGAP and MMPs all around, and Delhi was also doing some very interesting things. And I was saying, why have you moved on to Cisco? And he was explaining to me, he was acting associated with some very, very big project of Cisco, where they a global smart city project that they were getting into. So Mr. Prakash Kumar was somehow also associated with that. And today I am very happy that from the private sector, he's back into the, not actually in the government, but he's heading such an important national IT infrastructure project. He led it, and he made it successful. Yeah. So I think finally what I would say is that Mr. Prakash Kumar has the thoroughness of a bureaucrat, the relentlessness of a technocrat, and the zeal of a private sector leader. All this, however, only partly describes Prakash Kumar, the CEO of GSTN. Few people can match Mr. Kumar's deep systemic knowledge of various tax departments and their intricate processes, which come from his stints at various tax departments. Even fewer can match the combination of his industry understanding along with a rare technological acumen. No wonder that the GSTN network, with around 60 fintech companies as Suvidha providers, who in turn are supported by around 900 service providers has been a phenomenal success. An explorer and a learner at heart, Mr. Prakash Kumar has a deeply reformist approach to both life and work. Not many would know that he has accomplished the rare adventure of traveling to both the South Pole and the North Pole. Yes, I said the South Pole and the North Pole. If the GST reform can be lauded as the core enabler of wide-ranging taxation transformation in India, then Mr. Prakash Kumar can rightly be termed as the ace architect of the GST implementation. No wonder then he was roped in as the CEO of GSTN within months after the government decided to start work on GSTN in 2014. Even though the government had the political will, supported by a much-needed constitutional mandate, the numerous complexities associated with the GST rollout demanded the multifaceted skills of no less than Prakash Kumar. Mr. Prakash possesses a unique breadth of experience and expertise, both in the government and private sectors, that cover the entire gamut of IT, e-governance, and indirect taxation sectors. His impeccable record, studded with a wide range of accomplishments in the diverse fields of IT, electronics, and indirect taxation, is unparalleled. He spent first 2 decades working for state and federal governments in India as member of the country's premier Indian Administrative Service, honing his skills in the field of general management, indirect taxation, and IT and e-governance, implementing large IT projects in the government. The next 12 years were spent in private sector with Cisco, Microsoft, and now with the GSTN network. He has been advising state and federal governments on the use of technology for improving the services delivery to people, and later for setting up the IT infrastructure for implementing the GST in India for federal as well as for the state governments. Mr. Prakash Kumar is a very strong advocate of progressive and open policies that are good for the industry and the country, and enable fast adoption of technology and accelerate innovation. Mr. Kumar has extensive experience in government of formulating and implementing policies, strategies, and action plans to implement automation, covering the entire enabling ecosystem, including infrastructure, human resource development, e-governance, and establishing public-private partnerships. He has a deep understanding of the issues and problems related to the transformational ICT implementation. He is a strong advocate of right to information, a subject on which he has authored 3 books and written columns and articles in national newspapers. The Dataquest Awards jury was unanimous in its recognition of his outstanding contribution in envisioning, planning, building, testing, deploying, and now running the mammoth GST network, a revolutionary infrastructure and a much acclaimed national asset for simplifying and enhancing tax collection in a fair, transparent, and efficient manner. His behind-the-scene role in GST will long be remembered in the history of India's one of the biggest ever tax reforms. Dataquest Awards jury and editors of Cybermedia and Dataquest are proud to confer the Dataquest IT Person of the Year award on Shri Prakash Kumar. Congratulations, Mr. Kumar, and now can I invite you to deliver your acceptance speech.
Thank you, Mr. Ibrahim. You have used so many words. In fact, first I would like to thank Dataquest and all the jury members for giving this award to me. I humbly accept it on behalf of more than 1,000 boys and girls of GSTN, Infosys, and TechM, who have worked tirelessly for last more than 4 years on this project. In this journey, there were some individuals who have been very, very helpful, and they played a key role. And I would like to name some of them for the GST project. Dr. Pramod Verma, Chief Architect of UIDI, who is also the architect of GST solution, so to design this solution. Mr. Naveen Kumar, who was our first chairman and who actually built this institution, the GST network as a company, a unique experience of public-private partnership. Dr. Hasmukh Adhya, who was the revenue secretary when the whole thing was done. Mr. Chandrasekhar, in fact, he has been our guiding light here for last more than 6 years, and Mr. Nandan Nilekani, whom I used to refer to whenever we used to get stuck in some kind of, what strategy do I adopt? How do I go forward? How do I do this? This moment, I would also like to thank two of my mentors who actually got me into this. One is Mr. Umesh Saigal. He's a senior IAS officer who retired as Secretary to Government of India, who challenged me to take up the first automation project which I did in 1992, which was computerization of 78 liquor shops of Delhi. DSIDC still sells liquor in Delhi. And then to Mr. BP Misra, who gave me uninstated support to automate Delhi Sales Tax Department, which happened in mid-90s from 94 to 97. I would like to take this opportunity to thank my parents, my two children, and the newly acquired son-in-law, and the family members and friends who have given uninstated support during this period. Especially at the end, I would like to thank my wife, Pallavi, who has been like a solid rock behind me, who is there to first to appreciate, who's also been a gentle critic and providing selfless care for last more than 34 years. At the end, I would like to recite a small poem by a very famous Hindi poet called Shiv Mangal Singh Suman, which is in Hindi. जीवन अस्थिर अनजाने ही हो जाता पथ पर मेल कहीं, सीमित पगडग लंबित मंजिल तय करला लेना कुछ खेल नहीं, दाएं बाएं सुख दुख चलते सम्मुख चलता पथ का प्रसाद, जिस जिस से पथ पर स्नेह मिला उस राही को धन्यवाद। सांसों पर अवलंबित काया जब चलते चलते चूर हुई, तो स्नेह शब्द मिल गए, मिली नवस्फूर्ति थकावट दूर हुई, पथ के पहचाने छूट गए पर साथ साथ चल रही याद, जिस जिस पथ पर स्नेह मिला उस राही को धन्यवाद। उन सभी को जिन्होंने हमारी इस यात्रा में हमारे को मदद की, उन सभी को धन्यवाद। I would love to have stood and taken this trophy, but I'm doing it virtually, sitting in my office in Aero City, GSTN. Thank you very much, Dataquest, for conferring me with this award. Mr. Gupta, you are on mute.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Mr. Kumar. On behalf of Dataquest, I would like to thank everyone for a wonderful session. Can we have all the panelists back, please? So, thank you very much indeed, all of you, for such a wonderful discussion and great achievements, Mr. Kumar. So congratulations to you once again. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.